Salam everyone and welcome back to Muslim Girl Diaries. Today I wanted to start with asking you something honestly. Have you ever felt like you were doing everything that you could to fix your life, but nothing around you seems to change? So you make dua, you try to be patient, you wait for things to improve, but then deep inside, there's this feeling that you just feel that you're just stuck. And believe me, most of us, when we feel this way, we look outward and then we start to think, well, if my situation changes, I'll probably finally feel okay. Or we might think that, if people treat me differently, then I'll be at peace. We could also think like, if my life becomes easier, then I'll be happy. But you see, there's a question that we rarely ask ourselves. Just what if the reason nothing is changing around us is because something inside of us is still waiting to change? Because one of the deepest truths of faith and one of the most powerful lessons that Ramadan teaches us is this. Indeed, God does not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. This is not just a verse to recite from the Holy Quran, but it is a principle for life. And it's telling us something very profound. And it's that external change always begins with internal transformation. And that is exactly why the holy month of Ramadan exists. Ramadan is not just about hunger, it's about awakening. Many people think fasting is about food, but fasting was never just meant to change your stomach. It was actually meant to wake up your heart, because when you fast, something very honest happens. You begin to see yourself very clearly. You also begin to notice how quickly you get irritated, how easily you start to lose patience, how attached you are to comfort, and maybe even how reactive our emotions can be. And sometimes that realization can feel very uncomfortable, but it's also not meant to shame you at all. It's just meant to wake you up, because one of the most beautiful teachings tells us that the greatest struggle a person can ever fight is not against other people. It is the struggle against their own ego, against the very parts inside of us that keep us always stuck. And the holy month of Ramadan is the training ground for that struggle. So why does inner change matter so much? Let me share something many young people struggle with today. They're trying so hard to fix their lives externally because they believe that if I achieve more, I'll just feel more secure. If I look in the mirror, I'll feel more confident. If people approve of me, I'll feel worthy. And that's the toughest one. I think all generations go through that. But here's the reality. If the inside is unsettled, no external success will ever feel enough, because peace is not a place that you reach. It's actually a state that you build within yourself. And we learn that whoever reforms what is between themselves and God, God will reform what is between them and people. And what does that mean? Well, it means that when the heart becomes stable, life begins to align around it. And that's just the truth. There was once a young person who felt completely stuck in life and they wanted to change. So, in order to bring that change, they prayed for new opportunities, better relationships, more clarity, which is something that we all would do, right? But nothing seemed to move. And that does happen to a lot of us. And slowly, they start to become frustrated, which happens to many of us. And then one night in the holy month of Ramadan, they heard something that just shifted their entire perspective. And that is, maybe your life is not stuck because your circumstances are wrong, but because your heart is exhausted. And that shook them. Because take a second and hear that again. So instead of asking God to change their world, instead they started asking, change me first. And then they start to begin working on their patience, or controlling their reactions, or even letting go of resentment, which we all have, softening their hearts. And then suddenly, with all of that, something started to happen. Their life started to feel lighter. And it's not because their problems disappeared, because let's face it, problems will never just disappear. We will go through problems throughout our entire lives. But because they became stronger inside. And that is what we want. So then what does fasting teach us about transformation? Well, fasting trains the soul in ways and nothing else can. And then it teaches you that you can say no to your desires. It also teaches you that you can endure discomfort. That's possible. It teaches you that you're not controlled by your impulses. And then perhaps the most importantly, it teaches you that you have the power to choose who you become. And that's why fasting is described as a shield not just from sin, but from becoming a prisoner of your own ego. But from becoming a prisoner of your own ego, the holy nights of Ramadan is a time for deep change. So these nights aren't just about rituals, they're about internal renewal. So they are an invitation to ask yourself honest questions, like, for example, what inside me really needs healing? Or what pain am I still holding on to? What emotional burdens do I need to surrender? Because the heart cannot grow while carrying resentment, pride, envy, or despair. And so during these holy nights, when the heart reconnects with God, it begins to feel alive again. It's stronger, calmer, more at peace. And that's what we need, especially during our time right now. Now, this part goes especially for my young listeners. If you're young and listening right now, you are living in a world that constantly tells you change how you look, change your environment, change your external success. But faith teaches you something so much more deeper than that. Faith tells you change your heart first, because of course when the inside becomes stable, you handle stress with wisdom, you're not going to break easily, you're going to grow instead of collapsing, you respond instead of just reacting. And that is the truest meaning of what strength is and what we need as humans to live in this world. So as you move through these blessed nights, don't just ask God to change your life, ask him to also change your heart, because when the heart changes, your perspective changes, your reactions change, your relationships change, your resilience grows, and slowly, then your entire life begins to transform. And before we end, I want you to sit with this question. What's one thing inside yourself that you know needs to change, but you've just been avoiding facing it? And also, are you ready this holy month of Ramadan to ask God to help you change it? Thank you for listening.